that we are broadcasting a spacewalk at night into the early morning hours. This necessitated by the way today's spacewalking date selected by the Russians fell in terms of Russian ground station coverage to facilitate communications data and telemetry of the spacewalk that will be conducted shortly by Sergei Prokopiev and Dmitry Petelin as they are suiting up, pre-breathing pure oxygen in the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the station in the airlock. This spacewalk was to have been conducted back on November 25th, but as Prokopiev and Petelin were in the final stages of their pre-spacewalk preparations 3 weeks ago, there was a problem with the water cooling loops in both of their suits. That resulted in a scrubbing of the spacewalk and a postponement of the spacewalk. The two cosmonauts changed out the cooling pumps in both of their spacesuits, their Russian Orlan suits, and they are ready to go this evening with two healthy suits, ready to support what should be about a 6-hour, 37-minute spacewalk, in which their colleague inside the Russian segment, cosmonaut Anna Kikina, will be operating the Russian from a Russian work station, the European robotic arm that is already grappled to a radiator, the radiator carried up on the Rassvet module, along with an experiment airlock on Rassvet that was launched on the STS-132 mission of the Space Shuttle Atlantis 11.5 years ago, back in May of 2011. Prokopiev and Petelin began their spacewalking preparations several hours ago. They are continuing those preparations at this hour, while Russian specialists at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow discuss all of the spacewalking preparations with the two cosmonauts, who soon will be in the position of depressurizing the Poisk airlock down to vacuum, conducting final suit checks, and then opening up the hatch to begin tonight's spacewalk. The spacewalk by Prokopiev and Petelin will be the 257th in support of space station assembly maintenance and upgrades, the 12th spacewalk to be conducted out of the International Space Station this year, the 4th spacewalk for Expedition 68. This will be the 4th spacewalk in Prokopiev's career and the 2nd for Dmitry Petelin. Once again, tonight's spacewalk will have the effect of having the two cosmonauts demating a number of cables, both electrical cables and data and telemetry cables, hooking up the radiator that's on the Rassvet module, basically demating all of those cables, removing protective thermal covers from the radiator's attachment interfaces, then monitoring the actual movement of the radiator away from Rassvet through the use of the European robotic arm that will be operated by Anna Kikina from the workstation inside the Russian segment of the station. She will move the radiator to an attachment point on the Naoka module, but do so in very slow incremental steps, first moving the radiator to within just a few meters of an attachment point, and then finally locking on to the attachment mechanism on the multipurpose laboratory module, where it will be hooked up with a number of cables and bolts to permanently affix that radiator to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module.
Moscow Station on space to ground 24, radiogram 5123. That's for the ERA video setup. Go ahead and on space to ground 1.
Once again, Sergei Prokopiev, who's the Expedition 68 commander, and flight engineer Dmitry Petelin are suited up in their Russian Orlan suits, undergoing final checks of those Orlan suits in preparation for stepping outside of the Poisk module airlock a short time from now to begin a spacewalk that will
Anna,
see the movement of a heat-dissipating radiator from the Rosviet module on which it was launched back on the STS-132 mission, and its installation onto the Naoka Multipurpose Laboratory module.
For the Impact video server streaming. Do you see the stream? Yep. And I'm moving on to step 5.
This is Mission Control Houston. As spacewalk preparations have been ongoing over the past hour or so, Russian flight controllers and the flight controllers here at Mission Control in Houston have been noticing a stream of particles coming out of the Soyuz MS-22 vehicle that is attached to the Rosviet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. We do not know what the source of this stream of particles is at this point. There is discussions that are ongoing. First, to make sure that the safety of the two spacewalkers is not compromised in any way, and then to determine what impact, if any, this might have on the integrity of that Soyuz vehicle.
Ребят, как текущее давление по УДСК в скафандрах?
Guys, what's the current pressure in the suits for Orlan? Pressure gauge 0.38 for EV2 and 0.38 for EV1. All right, guys. Meanwhile, you're preparing the cue card, your first step for that cue card, and getting ready to transition to autonomous power. Copy.
This is Mission Control Houston. Just to recap, Sergei Prokopiev and Dmitry Petelin are suited up in their Russian Orlan spacesuits in the airlock of the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. They are in the process of depressurizing the airlock down to vacuum in what they believe will be the start of their spacewalk tonight, to support the movement of a heat-dissipating radiator from the Rosviet module to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module. We are still in concert with the Russian flight controllers outside of Moscow, evaluating a stream of particles that appears to be coming from the Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft that is docked to the Rosviet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the station. That began about 40 minutes ago. We do not know what the source of that stream of particles is, but we are evaluating it and trying to determine whether or not this will have any impact on this evening's spacewalk. This is Mission Control Houston, and to illustrate what we have just been discussing, this is the Soyuz MS-22 vehicle that is docked to the Rosviet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the station. And this is the issue that's under discussion right now here in Mission Control and on the loops with the Russian shift flight director and other Russian specialists as to what may be causing this stream of particles that appears to be coming from the area of the instrumentation and propulsion module of the Soyuz MS-22.
Moscow, that's for step 6.4. I am not seeing any video. And we copy. You do not need to put step 7 in work as of yet. Copy. And Anna, could we please switch to space to ground 1? Copy.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're looking at a close-up view of the area of the Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft that began streaming particles of what could be coolant fluid that began about 45 minutes or so ago. This all happening while Sergei Prokopiev and Dmitry Petelin were in the airlock, the Poisk module airlock on the opposite side. This Soyuz, which brought Frank Rubio, Prokopiev, and Petelin to the station back in September, is docked to the Rosviet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the station. The Soyuz, again, is attached to the Earth-facing side, to the Rosviet module, where it docked back in September. And about 45 minutes ago, we began to see a stream of particles coming from the area of the instrumentation and propulsion module of this vehicle, as Prokopiev and Petelin had completed the donning of their Orlan spacesuits in preparation for the spacewalk that they are preparing to conduct outside of the Poisk airlock to support the movement of a heat-dissipating radiator from the Rosviet module over to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module. The actual movement of the radiator would be supported from inside the station by cosmonaut Anna Kikina, operating the European robotic arm, while Prokopiev and Petelin disconnect a number of cables, monitor the relocation of that radiator, and then hook up mechanical and hydraulic connections for the radiator to Naoka. Now, what impact this apparent leak or stream of particles from the Soyuz MS-22 might have on tonight's spacewalk, not yet known. We are in discussions with the Russians as we speak to determine whether or not there will be any impact to the spacewalk itself.
МКС «Суб Москвы», канале СГ-2 для Сергея, Дмитрия, Анны.
Moscow station on space to ground. 2 for Sergey, Dmitry. And go ahead. Guys, external solder loop for the Soyuz is leaking. We are currently analyzing the situation and looking into the telemetry, so you will have to stand by and wait for our final decision regarding your EVA. We copy. The vehicle is not leaking itself. The ISS is fine. We are checking the telemetry. I'll let you know as soon as we know more from the telemetry. Copy, thank you. Sergey, Dmitry, what's the current pressure in the suits based on the Orlan pressure gauges? 0.38. Copy. All right, just monitor your cooling settings. So just make sure you're comfortable, guys, because you are going to be sitting still for the next half hour. All right, we'll copy. Copy. Yeah, just stand by for our commands and guidance and instructions. Will do.
This is Mission Control Houston. You just heard a conversation between Russian flight controllers in Korolyov at the Russian Mission Control Center and the two cosmonauts, Sergei Prokopiev, the Expedition 68 commander, and Dmitry Petelin, who are suited up in their Orlan suits inside the airlock in the Poisk module of the International Space Station. They were informed that the Russian flight control team is monitoring the leak that you're looking at right now that appears to be coming from the Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft that is docked to the Rosviet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The two cosmonauts were told to sit tight and await further word while the Russian technicians and engineers in Korolyov assess the current situation with the Soyuz spacecraft. This is the spacecraft that brought Prokopiev, Petelin, and Frank Rubio to the station back in September. The other Russian cosmonaut who is on board the station, Anna Kikina, launched on the SpaceX Crew Dragon, along with Nicole Mann, Josh Cassada, and Koichi Wakata. This is Mission Control Houston. Just to recap where we're at this evening. Expedition 68 Commander Sergei Prokopiev and Flight Engineer Dmitry Petelin of Roscosmos are suited up in their Orlan suits inside the airlock of the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. They had expected to begin a short time ago what was to have been about a 6-hour, 37-minute spacewalk to assist in the movement of a heat-dissipating radiator from the Rosviet module, which it is attached to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module with the assistance of cosmonaut Anna Kikina, who would be actually relocating the radiator through the use of the European robotic arm. This spacewalk was to have been conducted back on November 25th, but was postponed when cooling loop issues with their two Orlan suits, both suits for Prokopiev and Petelin, encountered problems during suit-up activities, preventing that spacewalk from being conducted 3 weeks ago. With the cooling pumps in their suits having been replaced and their suits checked out, the spacewalk was rescheduled for this evening. An unusual time for a spacewalk, but that due to coverage on Russian ground stations throughout the night. But about an hour ago, it was first observed that a stream of particles began emanating from the Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft that is docked to the Rosviet module, which is on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the station. We are still awaiting confirmation as to what the substance is that is either leaking or streaming out of the Soyuz, and whether or not it would pose any hazard to the two cosmonauts moving outside for their spacewalk this evening, as well as what impact it might have to the physical integrity of the Soyuz spacecraft itself. The two cosmonauts were told a short time ago by Russian flight controllers to stand by. There are discussions ongoing with Russian managers at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow to determine precisely what this substance is that is leaking or emanating from the station, from the Soyuz, and what impact it might have on tonight's spacewalk. This is Mission Control Houston. The two spacewalkers for this evening, Sergei Prokopiev and Dmitry Petelin, continue to stand by inside the airlock of the Poisk module, waiting for further word from Russian officials as to whether or not they will proceed with this evening's spacewalk to assist in the relocation of a radiator from the Rosviet module to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module. Once again, the two spacewalkers are standing by, waiting for further word from Russian managers as to whether or not they will proceed with this evening's spacewalk. Two hours ago, it was first noted that there was a warning associated with low pressure in one of the two external Soyuz cooling loops, and along with that, a visible stream of particles that emanated from the aft of the Soyuz vehicle near the instrumentation and propulsion module, indicative of a leak. The Russian managers are evaluating what that might be and what may have caused such a leak.
МКС Суб Москвы в канале.
Station Moscow on Space Ground 2 for Anna, Comcheck. Anna, how do you copy? I copy you loud and clear on Space Ground 2. I also copy you loud and clear.
Сергей Дмитрий, как меня...
Sergey Dmitry, how do you copy me? Yeah, we're here.
Решение прекратить шлюзование.
So,
Буквально через пару минут я передам вас Дмитрию.
I will give the mic to Dmitry in a couple of minutes, so we are stopping the press procedure. Copy.
Сергей Дмитрий.
Sergey Dmitry, this is Dmitry supporting the depress procedure. How do you copy? We copy you loud and clear.
Хорошо, текущее давление подыска какое?
So what is the space pressure gauge pressure right now? 037 for EV1 and EV2, both. Copy.
Принято, что да,
Sergey, so the decision has been made to cancel EVA, so we'll have to do the repress. Copy.
Дим, давай с тобой тогда готовим книжечку, фрагмент
Dmitry,
15.
so it will be cue card number 13.
До 600 миллиметров.
It is the step there, a repress of MRM2 up to 600 millimeters. Okay, let me prepare cue card number 13.
Я
Yes,
правильно
go
понимаю, ты
ahead.
сами в СГ-2, если что, нам поможешь, да?
Do you understand it correctly that Anna here in Space Ground 2, she can hear us and she will help
Там все подготовлены.
you if needed?
На электронной инструкции.
Yes, Anna, and you also please prepare cue card, unintelligible. Okay, number 13. Copy number 13.
This is Mission Control Houston. You just heard a moment ago the word officially passed on by Russian flight controllers at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow to Sergei Prokopiev and Dmitry Petelin that tonight's spacewalk has been canceled because of an observed leak of what is believed to be a cooling substance from the Soyuz MS-22 that is docked to the Rosviet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The leak was first observed about 2 hours ago, associated with a warning associated with low pressure in one of the two external Soyuz cooling loops. We noticed a visible stream of flakes coming from the aft of the Soyuz near the instrumentation and propulsion module that was indicative of a leak. The experts, the specialists in Moscow, are evaluating the nature of the fluid that appears to be leaking from the Soyuz and what impact that might have to the integrity of the Soyuz MS-22 that was launched back in September with Prokopiev, Petelin, and NASA astronaut Frank Rubio.
And the regulator should be put into the...
So the two cosmonauts who had begun the depressurization of the Poisk airlock for their planned 6-hour, 37-minute spacewalk to move a heat-dissipating radiator from the Rosviet module to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module. This spacewalk had been postponed 3 weeks ago, back on November 25th, because of problems with cooling pumps in the Orlan spacesuits for both Prokopiev and Petelin. Those pumps were replaced. The Orlan suits were checked out in good shape, and they donned the spacesuits a few hours ago and began spacewalk preparations for this evening's excursion. But the leak in the Soyuz MS-22 of a substance not confirmed at this point has resulted in the cancellation of tonight's spacewalk, while the Russian flight control team and senior engineers evaluate what the source of the leak is, what the fluid is that is leaking, and what impact this might have to the integrity of the Soyuz itself.
And the pressure should be 260. Okay, 260. So I'm opening the valve. The valve is open. Repress is confirmed. Copy. The pressure is going up. And it is dropping in the spacesuit as per the pressure gauge with the SCAM. Copy.
The airlock in the Poisk module is now in the process of being repressurized. The two cosmonauts will open the hatch between the airlock and the Poisk module of the International Space Station and make their way back inside, get out of their Orlan suits. The two cosmonauts and the rest of the Expedition 68 crew not in any danger, but we are standing by for any further word from the Russian flight controllers as to what the nature of the leak was that was observed a couple of hours ago coming from the aft portion of the Soyuz MS-22 vehicle docked to the Rosviad module that resulted in the cancellation of tonight's spacewalk.
I didn't copy you. This is Anna. 170 is the pressure, but we can copy you, Anna. All right, copy 170 is the pressure reading. 0.2 is the pressure in the spacesuit. Copy. Sounds good. Okay, once it reaches 260, the KVD-PHU valve will have to be closed. Copy. $240. Copy. 250. 260, I'm closing the valve. Copy, KVD-PHU valve should be closed and disabled. Okay, and I'm sending the inhibit. Copy. Point 1 is in the spacesuit pressure. Copy. Dima, once again, step 7 of the Q card number 13, put it into point 42. Okay. Copy, point 42. Okay, so I'm doing the repress point 242. Yes, then it will be repress purge and then O2 open EV. So which Q card is that? It is Q card number 13, step 7. Okay, so the repress should be up to the mark point 42 and then
This is Mission Control Houston. You're listening to Russian flight controllers through an interpreter as they guide Sergei Prokopiev and Dmitry Petelin through the procedures to repressurize the airlock in the Poisk module of the International Space Station on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the complex. Their spacewalk canceled for this evening because of an unexpected leak of what appears to be coolant from the Soyuz MS-22 vehicle. That leak is being investigated by Russian specialists as we speak.
What is
the leak first noted around 6:45 p.m. Central Time, a little over 2 hours ago, resulting in a stream of particles coming from the aft portion of the Soyuz. It is not clear at this point what the fluid was that was leaking from the Soyuz or what impact this might have to the future use of the Soyuz and the future integrity of the vehicle itself. But the spacewalk has been canceled for this evening, and at no time, again, let me reemphasize, at no time were Prokopiev, Patelin, or the other members of the Expedition 68 crew in any danger.
Until the 590 millimeters, okay, 590 millimeters MRM2 repress. I'm opening KVD valve. It is open. First, send the command to KVD PHO valve enable, and then open the valve and control the pressure increase and also the drop of the pressure in the spacesuit.
Идет снижение в скафандре. 0,38.
Okay, it is 0.38 in the spacesuit.
Шагом, Сереж, 40 миллиметров давление в МИМе-2. Хорошо.
All right, Sergey, and the pressure in MRM2 should be increased
340.
by 40 increments. Okay, so it's 340 now.
0,32 из выключенного.
0.32 in the spacesuit. Copy.
370.
370 in the module.
Принято, хорошо.
Copy, sounds good.
Давление 400. Принято.
400. Copy.
$430.
430. 430 millimeters.
Принято.
Copy.
$500.
500.
$480.
480.
Принято.
Copy.
Давление 500.
The pressure is 500.
Принято.
Copy.
$530.
530.
И идем до 590. На 590 КВД по ХВСУ
We
закрыть.
proceed until 590, then the KVD PHO valve should be closed after that.
Клапан.
Valve.
Есть погасание. КВД открыт. Запуск.
KVD open is not illuminated. Copy. What is the current pressure in the suits via the ODSK? 004, and I also have 004.
Хорошо.
Copy. Good.
Переводить в положение сброс СК.
Now you can put it in the position
Переводим сброс.
to сброс SK.
Хорошо.
Transitioning.
И, Сереж, Дим,
Sounds good. And Sergey and Dmitry,
по фрагменту
use
15 шага 9, это выход из скафандров.
Q card 15.9,
Ань, а мы с тобой готовим фрагмент
egressing the suit, and Anna, we are preparing to work per Q card 17. 17.
Смотри, по фрагменту 17
And look
тебе
at
необходимо
Q card 17.
Что, я первый? Давай.
So I'm first? Okay, go ahead. You will have to open the KVD PHO manually and to equalize the pressure between КВД ПХО and MRM-2. And when you hear Dmitry and Sergey, you will hear some hissing. That's just pressure equalization. Okay, that sounds good. And you are working per cue card 15. Exit from the Orlan one at a time. I'm first and I am second. If you are ready, you can begin open the КВД ПХО valve. You can take the MV there to monitor the pressure, just so you have a better idea of what the pressure is during the pressure equalization process. Okay, I'm taking MV number 3. Okay, and when you begin working with the КВД ПХО valve, please let me know. I'm opening the back door. I am beginning to work with the КВД ПХО valve. The stack pressure is 760. Copy 760. Okay, you are going to open the КВД ПХО valve manually. Okay, ПХО putting it into open position, and I confirm. The second EV2 has egressed the suit. Copy, Dmitry, good. I have opened the valve, copy, and you are now equalizing pressure between RM2 and ПХО. Take it slow. Okay. And Dmitry is egressing? Yes, I'm stepping away to help out. But you'll have to go back to help the other one, okay. Okay, do you need to be freed up here? Yes, please. Okay, I have to turn around and do it like this.
This is Mission Control Houston. Sergei Prokopiev and Dmitry Petelin are now getting out of their Orlan spacesuits in the airlock of the Poisk module. The airlock having now been repressurized following the cancellation of tonight's spacewalk because of an observed leak of what is believed to be coolant from the Soyuz MS-22 that began about 2 hours and 15 minutes ago. A stream of particles coming from the aft end of the Soyuz around the area of the instrumentation and propulsion module. The source of the leak not known. The reason for the leak not yet known. Russian specialists are poring over data at the moment, trying to determine the cause of the leak. But again, just to recap, the spacewalk was called off by Russian managers about 20 minutes ago. That word radioed up to Prokopiev and Petelin. So there'll be no spacewalk tonight to relocate a radiator from the Rosviet module to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module.
Скажи, пожалуйста, у тебя по моновакууме текущее давление?
Anna, what is the current pressure for the MVER, please?
759,5, полделения минус.
759.5. Copy 759.5. Can you tell me the current pressure in MRM2? Dmitry.
Миллиметра.
753 in MRM2. Copy 753. Should I close it?
To recap tonight's developments, Sergei Prokopiev, the Expedition 68 commander, and flight engineer Dmitry Petelin of Roscosmos, suited up in their Orlan suits, ready to step outside of the Poisk airlock to begin what was to have been a 6-hour, 37-minute spacewalk to work in concert with European robotic arm operator Anna Kikina from inside the International Space Station, in the movement of a heat-dissipating radiator from the Rosviet module to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module. This spacewalk was originally scheduled for November 25th and was canceled 3 weeks ago on that date due to problems with cooling pumps in both Prokopiev and Petelin's Orlan spacesuits. Those pumps were replaced, the suits were checked out, and the spacewalk was rescheduled for this evening. The two cosmonauts were in the process of depressurizing the Poisk airlock down to vacuum to begin their spacewalk when, around 6:45 p.m. Central Time this evening, it was noticed that there was a fairly sizable leak of fluid and particles coming from the aft portion of the Soyuz MS-22 that you see in your field of view. That Soyuz, that was the ride uphill for Prokopiev, Petelin, and NASA astronaut Frank Rubio back in September, is docked to the Rosviet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the station. The stream of flakes from the area, at least, of the instrumentation and propulsion module was indicative of a leak. That leak appears to have emanated from an external cooling loop The loop itself has two manifolds, but the loop itself was leaking fairly substantially.
The current pressure in MRM2.
And so, as a result, Russian managers huddled and made the decision to cancel tonight's spacewalk. At that point, Prokopiev and Petelin began the process of repressurizing the Poisk airlock. It is back now to its normal pressure, and the two cosmonauts are getting out of their Orlan suits and will be back inside the International Space Station habitable volume a short time from now. At no time were Prokopiev, Petelin, or the other crew members of Expedition 68, Anna Kikina, Frank Rubio, Nicole Mann, Josh Cassada, or Koichi Wakata, at no time were any of the crew members in any danger.
And for repress for Dmitry, let's try opening the PHU SU MRM2 hatch. In work. Copy.
Открыт люк.
The hatch is open. Copy. Anna, the MRM2 hatch is open. Now we need to put the hatch tool back to where it was. And the КВД PHU SU NEP valve should be placed into the electric mode. And please report when you've completed that. The hatch tool is stowed back in its place, and the КВД PHU SU NEP is in electric control. Copy. Anna, thank you for your great work. I am passing the baton back to Anton. Anna, please translate to MLM.
This is Mission Control Houston. The hatch now open to the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the station. Prokopiev and Petelin back inside the International Space Station.
Sergei, have you completed step 11 in Q card 16, or is it still in work? It's still in work. Please report when you've completed step 11.
Сереж, что по Москве по фрагменту 16, как у вас дела?
Sergey, this is Moscow. For Q card 16, how are you doing?
Да, мы закончили 16-й.
We've completed Q card 16. We've done everything on it. Okay, copy. And then you and us, we need to work on Q card 17, transitioning the PKO back into the post-EVA configuration. We have to close the onboard BECA 3MO2 tank valves.
Насколько я понял, это в 16-м мы вроде это сделали. Сейчас проверим.
As I understand, we've already completed this, but let us just double check. Okay, standing by for your report that you've completed step 14, Q card 17. Moscow Station, on space to ground 2. Yes, Dmitry, we've completed step 14. That's great news. Thank you. And I want to thank you and Sergey. You did a great job for the repress. Unfortunately, the EVA did not happen, but at least we checked the pumps. They are operating nominally after your change out, so that's good. And hopefully everything else will be okay. Thank you. And now I am passing you back to Anton. All the best of luck. Thank you for your support. All the best. Okay, this is Anton. So now Anna is working with the air arm. We will be slowly transitioning the station back to nominal configuration. And then we'll work per the RODF to bring everything back to nominal. Okay, copy. For now, prepare the never mind. RODF. EVA from MRAM2, step 4.21. 4.21 and work.
This is Mission Control Houston. What you're looking at are more particles that are coming from the Soyuz MS-22 vehicle at the International Space Station, docked to the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the station. About 2 hours and 40 minutes ago, it was noted that a stream of particles began leaking from the Soyuz, not specifically known from what area. It was believed to have been in the aft area of the Soyuz, around the instrumentation and propulsion module. The cause of this leak, not known at this point. Russian specialists are continuing to look at the data and discussing what may have triggered this leak. It was determined that the leak was coming from a cooling loop in the Soyuz, which enunciated a warning tone on board associated with a drop in pressure in the particular cooling loop on the Soyuz itself. This all happened at the time that Sergei Prokopyev and Dmitry Petelin were suited up inside the Poisk airlock on the space-facing side, on the opposite side of the Russian segment of the station, ready to begin a spacewalk this evening to help relocate a radiator from the Rassvet module to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module. After standing by in the airlock in their Orlan spacesuits, Russian managers informed them that the spacewalk tonight would be canceled while they evaluate the next course of action in determining what may have caused the leak in the Soyuz vehicle and a future course of action. So no spacewalk this evening. In the meantime, Prokopyev and Petelin are back inside the space station. The airlock has been repressurized. At no time were any of the crew members of Expedition 68 in any danger, and you can see that the leak continues from the area of the instrumentation and propulsion module on the Soyuz MS-22. This is Mission Control Houston. You're continuing to take a look at particles leaking from the Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft docked to the Rassvet module of the International Space Station. This leak was first observed about 2 hours and 45 minutes ago, around 6:45 p.m. Central Time, at the time at which Sergei Prokopyev and Dmitry Petelin were preparing to begin a spacewalk to move outside of the Poisk airlock of the station, a spacewalk designed to move a radiator from the Rassvet module to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module. This leak or stream of particles from the area of the instrumentation and propulsion module was associated with a drop in pressure in the cooling loop of the Soyuz MS-22. It is not known what the source of the leak is. Russian specialists are in the process of evaluating data, taking a careful look at video that is being sent to them from here in Mission Control, while we stand by and wait for further word. In the meantime, Prokopyev and Petelin safely back inside the International Space Station. They were never in any danger in the airlock, in the Poisk airlock of the station, preparing for their spacewalk. They're now out of their Orlan spacesuits, awaiting further word on what the next course of action will be. This is the Soyuz vehicle that was launched back in September to carry Prokopyev, the Soyuz commander, and now Expedition 68 commander, Petelin, and NASA's Frank Rubio to the station, launching from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan.
Station space to ground 1 for Dmitry.
Отвечаю, вас Г2.
Go ahead on space to ground 2.
Антон, ну 421, вот я открыл, да, я так понимаю.
I opened 421, and so I'm supposed to do
Станции не сделали, поэтому по
SU deactivation and the pressure sensors test. Those steps 2, 4, and 6 to 11 have to be completed.
Принято. 2, 4, 6 по 11.
Copy that. Steps 2, 4, and 6 through 11.
Дмитрий, и ДСД ставим 690.
And Dmitry, the pressure sensors should be in at 690.
This is Mission Control Houston. Once again, it has been just about 3 hours now since we first observed what you're seeing on the screen, that being a leak of particles, presumably from a cooling loop on the Soyuz MS-22 at the Rassvet module of the International Space Station that forced a cancellation of tonight's spacewalk by Sergei Prokopyev and Dmitry Petelin. The leak of the fluid that you're seeing in the form of snowflake-like particles, apparently coming from a cooling loop on the Soyuz. Not clear at this point from the Russian specialists as to what impact, if any, this might have on the performance or the integrity of the Soyuz spacecraft. The two spacewalkers for tonight, Sergei Prokopyev and Dmitry Petelin, who along with Frank Rubio of NASA launched on this Soyuz vehicle back in September from the Baikonur Cosmodrome in Kazakhstan. Prokopyev and Petelin were suited up inside the Poisk airlock on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the station, and they were depressurizing the Poisk airlock down to vacuum to begin a spacewalk to move a radiator, along with the assistance of Anna Kikina, the European robotic arm operator, inside the Russian segment of the station. That radiator was to have moved from the Rassvet module to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module. The Russian managers met at the Russian Mission Control Center in Korolyov outside of Moscow and determined that tonight's spacewalk would have to be canceled. That word was radioed up to the two spacewalkers and the rest of the crew on board the station. And with the cancellation of the spacewalk, the Poisk airlock was repressurized. Prokopyev and Petelin climbed out of their Orlan spacesuits. They're back inside the station. All of the Expedition 68 crew members were never in any danger during the course of tonight's activities, but we continue to watch this leak as it propagates itself on the Soyuz MS-22. The source of the leak not known at this point, or the cause. All we know is that this is associated with a warning tone that was enunciated, indicating a drop in pressure in the cooling loop of the Soyuz vehicle. There are two manifolds on this cooling loop, but there is a single cooling loop for the vehicle. This is Mission Control Houston. You're continuing to watch live video from the Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft that began leaking from a coolant loop, it is believed, about 3 hours ago, at the time at which Sergei Prokopyev and Dmitry Petelin were in the process of preparing for a spacewalk this evening that ultimately was canceled. It is believed that this leak is coming from the area of the instrumentation and propulsion module at the aft end of the Soyuz. The exact location of this leak not yet specifically pinpointed, and discussions are ongoing as to what the future course of action might be with this vehicle and what approach the Russian specialists will take in analyzing the data and making a determination in concert with International Space Station management as to what may be the end result of this leak that you're seeing, that again began about 3 hours ago, about 6:45 p.m. Central Time, as Prokopyev and Petelin were inside the airlock of the Poisk module of the International Space Station preparing for a spacewalk that eventually was canceled. They are back inside the station. The Expedition 68 crew is in great shape, at no time in any danger, while further discussions are ongoing with specialists and engineers as to the next course of action.
inaudible.
МКС Суд Москвы в канале СГ-2 для Дмитрия по проведению
Station Moscow. Space to ground 2 for Dmitry. And post to be reconfig.
Отвечаю вас, готово.
Go ahead on space to ground
Дим, я
2.
понимаю, ты еще занимаешься, да, приведением в исход?
I can see you're still in the process of
В принципе, все, мне
doing step 4.21.
Значит, понятно. У меня
Well, I just have to
приведение, там нужно электрон включить будет,
put the pressure gauges
включить, перестыковать опять
back in
сигнализацию
place.
на ПСС и проверить связь
Yes.
с следующим сигналом.
And also you need to switch your
Хорошо, тогда сигнализация.
alarm system from EVA support panel to PSS caution and warning panel and inaudible.
1,500 feet, and we contact 711 and access 297. Москвы. Г2, сигнализация ПСС перестыкована. Удачи 406.
Принято, Дим, спасибо. Сейчас мы команду подготовим.
Moscow Station.
Связь. Буквально минуту-две подожди, пожалуйста, подбить звук.
Да, я жду.
We switched the caution and warning system back to PSS.
Москва, ПСС Г2, да, прошла сигнализация. Вызов на связь отбил.
Да, принято, Дим.
We had the audible signal and I acknowledged it. Copy and thank you.
Да, готов, записываю.
Включить поток СМ и в МЛМ.
Now reactivate the поток in
SM and MLM for RODF.
Потоки, да, лучше дать.
Поток СМ.
Yes, поток in the service module.
7.2.1. Шаг 1.
And this is per step 1 of RODF
Поток МЛМ.
or atmosphere
5.2.1.
step 7.2.1.
Да, принято.
Фиксировал.
I copied.
Включить воздух в третий режим.
And reactivate воздух
На БВК
in
2,
mode 4. BVK 2 and 3 valves.
Цикл СО 20 минут.
And atmosphere purification system cycle 20 minutes. Vacuum pump system cycle 1 minute.
Воздуха 100%.
Airflow rate 100%.
Нажать клавишу «Работа».
Так, еще раз, цикл СО 20 дальше.
And what did you say after
Вакуумного насоса.
atmosphere purification system? Vacuum pump cycle
Расход воздуха
1 minute, airflow rate
100%.
100%.
И потом нажать клавишу «Работа».
And then press the operation button. Работа.
Принято.
Copy.
Бортовая СОКС СМ, пункт 3.2.
And this is per atmosphere system SOGS SM step 3.2.
Зафиксировал.
Дальше. Проверить исходное состояние электроном ЛМ
And
и
check
выполнить
electron
надо уже.
in MLM
Бортовая
and repress the liquid unit BG, and this is the SOGS RODF
3.2.
step 3.2, paragraph 3.2, step 2.
И по надуву пункт 3.6.
And for repress, this is paragraph 3.6.
Да, принято.
Copy and work.
Ну вот на первый взгляд пока все.
And this is it for now, I think.
Выполняем.
Copy, will do.
This is Mission Control Houston. If you're just joining us, expecting to see a spacewalk by Sergei Prokopiev and Dmitry Petelin, that was canceled just about an hour and 15 minutes ago because of this leak of coolant from a cooling loop on the Soyuz MS-22 that you're seeing here in this view. This leak was first observed about 6:45 p.m. Central Time this evening, while Prokopiev and Petelin were inside the airlock on the in the Poisk module on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the station, preparing. They were suited up in their Orlan suits, ready to go outside to begin a spacewalk that had originally been postponed 3 weeks ago because of cooling pump issues on both of their Orlan spacesuits. Those pumps were replaced, the suits were checked out, and everything was in readiness for the spacewalk tonight that would have seen Prokopiev and Petelin work in concert with cosmonaut Anna Kikina of Roscosmos, who was to have operated the European robotic arm to move a radiator from the Rassvet module to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module for its installation on Naoka. With the stream of coolant particles coming out of the aft area of the Soyuz MS-22, Russian managers met and determined that they would have to cancel the spacewalk tonight while they began further discussions on the next course of action, determining the integrity of the Soyuz MS-22. This is the spacecraft that brought Prokopiev, Petelin, and NASA astronaut Frank Rubio to the International Space Station back last September for a 6-month stay on the orbital outpost. It docked to the Rassvet module after a 2-orbit rendezvous last September, and Prokopiev, now the Expedition 68 commander, and Petelin and Rubio have been working along with the other members of the Expedition 68 crew, NASA astronauts Nicole Mann, Josh Cassada, Koichi Wakata, and Anna Kikina, the 4 of whom were launched on the SpaceX Crew Dragon vehicle to begin their long-duration stay on board the station. Again, the leak of this coolant from a cooling loop on the Soyuz MS-22, that was confirmed by a warning tone that was enunciated at the time that this leak was first observed, about 6:45 p.m. Central Time. The leak in the cooling loop, which has persisted for the past 3 hours or so, is still under investigation by the Russian flight controllers, who are assessing the data and looking at video to determine what the next course of action may be.
6, суб Москвы, канале СГ-2, далекие прием.
Station Moscow, space to ground 2. Go ahead, Anton.
Сергей.
Сергей.
Есть просьба отфотографировать
Please take
Союзе.
pictures of the instrumentation compartments
Максимально детализацию получить на фотографии. Максимально приблизить.
and try and zoom in as much as possible.
Да, я понял. Я
Okay, copy.
сделал уже видео небольшое.
I already took a short video
Место. В общем, если
of the location.
интересно, могу выйти на связь по другой схеме.
So, if you'd like, we can use other comm assets and
Да, можно. Да, можно.
talk about it.
Американские партнеры просили на 4-м и 7-м иллюминаторе шторки не трогать.
Our USOS colleagues asked not to open window shutters on window 4 and 7, okay? Do not open window shutters on windows 4 and 7. Copy.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're looking at a live view of the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Moscow, where Russian flight controllers continue to pore over data associated with a cooling loop leak that began about 6:45 p.m. Central Time this evening, while Sergei Prokopiev and Dmitry Petelin of Roscosmos were inside the Poisk airlock on the space-facing side of the Russian segment of the station, preparing for a spacewalk that eventually was canceled by Russian managers. This leak began a fairly substantial flow of coolant particles in the form of snowflakes, if you will. Began about 6:45 p.m. and was continuing at the last point that we had downlink video from the station. The spacewalk was canceled. It had been designed for Prokopiev and Petelin to work to move a radiator from the Rosviet module to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module. The spacewalk eventually canceled. The two cosmonauts repressurized the Poisk airlock, got out of their Orlan spacesuits. They're back inside the station. None of the Expedition 68 crew members were in any danger at any time. But Russian flight controllers are in discussions with NASA officials about the next course of action in regard to the Soyuz MS-22, which launched back in September, bringing Prokopiev, Petelin, and NASA's Frank Rubio to the International Space Station, docking to the Rosviet module.
Also, the electron was activated, and the photons are activated. Inaudible. Inaudible. And the photons are also activated. The Vostok And the SM is activated. Copy.
Чуть-чуть нужно поработать по восстановлению. У нас просто эта работа была запланирована на завтра.
We had activities planned for tomorrow.
Это тот же самый пункт 4.21.
It's the same step for decimal 21.
Там нужно установить защитные чехлы.
We need to install the protective covers on the flat surface of the PHO hatch and the PHO-SU.
Радиограмме 5126.
For radiogram 3126. Okay, yes, I understand. Copy.
This is Mission Control Houston. You're looking at a view of the extended European robotic arm, which is affixed to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module, extended in the direction of the Soyuz MS-22 that is docked to the Rassvet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. That European robotic arm was to have moved a radiator from Rassvet to Naoka for its installation during tonight's spacewalk by Sergei Prokopyev and Dmitry Petelin, but that spacewalk was canceled a few hours ago following the detection of a coolant leak from the Soyuz MS-22 that began about 6:45 p.m. Central Time this evening. Russian managers and flight controllers are working right now to assess data that they've been observing and determine the next course of action in concert with NASA managers and International Space Station managers in the wake of this coolant leak that propagated itself about 6:45 p.m. Central Time this evening. This is Mission Control Houston. Again, this view of the extended European robotic arm. Anna Kikina is at the controls of the arm from a workstation inside the Russian segment of the station, and the arm at the moment, which was originally to have moved a radiator from Rassvet to Naoka for tonight's spacewalk by Prokopyev and Petelin, now becomes a surveyor. It is being used to do a inspection of the Soyuz MS-22 to try to gather more data for Russian managers as to what may have caused the leak that caused the propagation of snowflake-like particles from the aft section of the Soyuz that began about 6:45 p.m. this evening. So that's what you're seeing, the arm in motion at the moment towards its extended position of about 37 feet in length, conducting a survey of the Soyuz MS-22. This is Mission Control Houston. Just to recap where we're at here this evening, you're looking at a view of the extended European robotic arm, having been extended by cosmonaut Anna Kikina from a workstation inside the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The arm, which is attached to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module, was to have been used this evening during a spacewalk by Sergei Prokopiev and Dmitry Petelin to transfer a radiator stowed on the outside of the Rosviet module to the multipurpose laboratory module, the Naoka. Prokopiev and Petelin were suited up in their Orlan suits in the Poisk module airlock. They had actually begun to depressurize the airlock in preparation for a spacewalk that had been planned for about 6 hours and 37 minutes. While that activity was going on, we first detected 4 hours ago a sudden stream of particles looking like a snow shower that was identified as coming from a cooling loop in the Soyuz MS-22, the crew vehicle, the sole Soyuz ferry ship that is attached to the Rosviet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the station. The cause of that leak of coolant, not known at this point. The effect, not yet known at this point. Russian managers gathered at the Russian Mission Control Center outside of Korolyov on the outskirts of Moscow, and quickly determined that they would have to cancel the spacewalk for this evening while they assess their next course of action. Prokopiev and Petelin repressurized the Poisk airlock, climbed out of their Orlan suits, and got back inside the station. At no time were any of the members of the Expedition 68 crew in any danger, but discussions are ongoing with Russian managers in Korolyov, along with International Space Station and NASA officials, as to what the next course of action will be regarding that Soyuz MS-22 vehicle. This is Mission Control Houston as we continue to wait for Russian managers and engineers to evaluate the coolant leak that was observed several hours ago on the Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft. With us is NASA's Chief Flight Director, Emily Nelson. Emily, can you fill us in on what you know and where we may be headed?
At this point, the experts in Moscow are going to be taking a look at their systems and responding to the leak according to their procedures and policies. Once they have a good understanding of the final status of the Soyuz tonight, we will then jointly make a decision about where to go forward from here.
And obviously, no danger to the crew. The crew's in good shape. Obviously, the spacewalk had to be canceled this evening, but otherwise, everything is stable on the station.
Yeah, the best plan of action tonight was to focus all of our attention, all of our Moscow team's attention on sorting out what's going on exactly with the Soyuz spacecraft, and then we'll regroup tomorrow.
Emily Nelson, NASA's Chief Flight Director, with a quick update on where we stand as engineering analysis of the coolant leak on the Soyuz MS-22 continues and will be continuing throughout the course of the evening this evening.
The second counter has completed.
This is Mission Control Houston. Just to recap, we had planned to conduct a spacewalk this evening by Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergei Prokopyev and Dmitry Petelin. The intent of the spacewalk was to have moved a radiator from the Rosviet module to the Naoka multipurpose laboratory module. That spacewalk was to have begun about 2.5 hours ago, but at 6:45 p.m. Central Time this evening, it was detected that a fairly significant leak of coolant was coming from the aft end near the instrumentation and propulsion module of the Soyuz MS-22 spacecraft that you see on the right side of your screen, which is docked to the Rosviet module on the Earth-facing side of the Russian segment of the International Space Station. The cause of that coolant leak unknown, and the effect at this point unknown, as Russian managers continue to look over the data and consult with both NASA managers and engineers and International Space Station partner individuals about the next course of action. No decisions have been made regarding the integrity of the Soyuz MS-22 or what the next course of action will be. We're going to wrap up our coverage for this evening, but we can assure you that we will keep you updated with information as it becomes available, as soon as it becomes available, and as warranted throughout the course of the night and into the morning tomorrow, when more information might be available. So again, we are continuing to work in concert with Russian managers and engineers regarding determining what may have caused a coolant leak on the Soyuz MS-22 vehicle on the right side of your screen. That was the launch vehicle for Sergei Prokopyev, Dmitry Petelin, and Frank Rubio back in September. No decisions on the next course of action have been made, but again, we will keep you updated every step of the way as more information becomes available. For now, we'll wrap up our coverage. All the crew members of Expedition 68 safely inside the International Space Station. They were never in any danger. And again, we'll keep you updated as soon as we have additional information. In the meantime, this is Mission Control Houston.
Planning for future generations requires us understanding how much water we have.
And we need to understand the water cycle in a lot of detail, and SWAT will provide that for us. My name is Tahani Amar.
I'm Cedric David.
Mark Simard.
Christine Jabara, and I'm an integration test engineer at JPL.
I study the world's rivers.
I'm one of the principal investigators for SWAT.
SWAT is an Earth orbiting satellite. It stands for Surface Water Ocean Topography.
SWAT will for the first time make measurement of water surface elevation, not only on the ocean, but also on the lakes and rivers of the entire globe.
This in itself will be a scientific revolution.
Collaborations and relationship building.